Gaming is life. That was the motto of the man named Inigo. He wasn't rich. He wasn't popular. But when he had his mouse in hand and his headset snug on his head, he was a god. Inside the 24-hour internet cafe, the air was thick with sweat, instant noodles, and the muffled rage of teenagers getting clapped in Valorant. But none of that mattered to him. Not the cramped seat. Not the aching spine. Not even the fact that he hadn't eaten a real meal in over 12 hours. Because Inigo was in the zone. He wasn't just playing. He was grinding. One more ranked win. One more frag highlight. One more clutch. The monitor flashed with rapid movements. Muzzle flashes. Headshots. Slide cancels. His reflexes were sharp, almost muscle memory now after years of playing FPS games. The sound of his teammates echoed through Discord. "Bro, Inigo, you're cracked. One more game." "Of course," he muttered. "I'm just getting started." He didn't blink much. Barely moved except for the essentials. A water bottle half filled with stale soda sat ignored beside his keyboard. Crumbs and grease marked the edges of his mousepad. But still, he kept going. Kill after kill. Win after win. The hours blurred. Day turned to night. Then to day again. 23 hours. That's how long he had been playing straight. His eyes burned. His hand cramped. But he didn't stop. Not when he was so close to diamond rank. Not when he was carrying the team like a one-man army. The last match started. An enemy team full of smurfs and wannabe pros. But it didn't matter. He dominated. One tap. Wallbang. Ace. Victory screen. The chat exploded in disbelief. WTF? Cheater? No way this guy's human. Inigo leaned back in his seat, letting out a breathless chuckle. Easy. He removed his headset slowly. His vision blurred for a second. His fingers tingled. He thought maybe he just needed to stretch. So he stood up. And that's when everything went black. No warning. No pain. Just a cold snap in his chest, and then nothing. The cafe attendant would later say he collapsed with a faint smile on his face. But that wasn't the end. Because when Inigo opened his eyes again, it wasn't the hum of PC fans or the glow of a monitor he saw. It was a blue sky, and a weird message floating in front of him like a hologram HUD. "You have awakened the shop of freedom. Welcome, patriot." Inigo blinked. What the F? Inigo rose to his feet and found himself in the middle of a clearing in a bright sunny day. That sunny day made him squint as he hadn't seen the glow of the sun for a while. But what's making his attention draw is the interface before him. Shop of Freedom. He read the text and tilted his head to the side, contemplating about what's going on. He was playing Valorant for straight hours, and then when he decided to take a rest, he collapsed to the ground. Was it because he died the moment he stood up? That may be possible, as he had learned of the case from YouTube, where a man was playing nonstop for days, but died the moment he rose to his feet. Inigo inhaled sharply. If that was the case, then it's a terrible way to die. There was no glory in that death. Not that he cared about glory, still, if he was going to die, at least he wanted to have some sort of dignity. Now, after his death, he found himself in this place. There's only one logical explanation to it. He was reincarnated, or for a technical term, he was Icegade. If one were to think about it, he woke up in a forest where most of the time main characters find themselves after their death, and a system of some sort will appear before them. In this case, a shop tab of freedom, which he hadn't checked yet. Now that it came to mind, he checked it by tapping the message. Like it was a mobile game notification. The screen expanded instantly, now showing a minimalist shop UI with tabs like foods and supplies and equipments. Inigo read the tabs one by one and tilted his head to the side. He knew where this was going. But to make sure, he tapped the Weapons tab, and there the interface displayed a vast array of weaponry ranging from assault rifles to machine guns, to submachine guns, and to handguns. And next to the display of each weapon was seemingly the price. Weapons category: Assault Rifles. M4A1, 5.56 NATO. 150 tokens. AK-47, 7.62 by 39 mm. 130 tokens. SCAR-H, 7.62 NATO. 220 tokens. FNFAL, 7.62 NATO. 200 tokens. M16A4, 5.56 NATO. 160 tokens. 416 Hong Kong dollars, 5.56 NATO. 180 tokens. MP5 9mm, 100 tokens. Uzi 9mm, 90 tokens. P90 5.7mm, 120 tokens. Vector .45 ACP, 140 tokens. Glock 19 9mm, 60 tokens. Desert Eagle .50 AE, 110 tokens. M1911 .45 ACP, 70 tokens. Revolver .357 Magnum, 85 tokens. Machine guns and LMGs. M249 SAW, 5.56 NATO, 300 tokens. PKM 7.62x 54 mmR, 320 tokens. M60 7.62 NATO, 310 tokens. Barrett M82.50 BMG, 800 tokens. Remington 700.308, 300 tokens. Dragunov SVD 7.62x 54 mmR, 280 tokens. Inigo scrolled with growing excitement. Damn, he muttered, the corner of his lips twitching. They weren't kidding. This is American freedom. He backed out of the weapons tab and checked the others. Combat uniform, urban tactical set, 500 tokens. Kevlar vest, 100 tokens. Ballistic helmet, 70 tokens. Night vision goggles, Gen 2, 250 tokens. Tactical gloves, 15 tokens. Combat boots, 20 tokens. Plate carrier, 200 tokens. Advanced load-bearing vest, 80 tokens. Frag grenade, M67, 50 tokens. Flashbang, M84, 30 tokens. Claymore mine, 90 tokens. C4 remote charge, single pack, 150 tokens. M320 grenade launcher, with 3 rounds, 300 tokens. MRE meal ready to eat, 10 tokens. Water bottle purified, 5 tokens. Ammo pack, 5.56mm x 120 rounds, 30 tokens. Ammo pack, 7.62mm x 100 rounds, 35 tokens. Medical kit field grade, 40 tokens. Painkillers, 15 tokens. Morphine injector, 50 tokens. Dirt bike, 400 tokens. HMMWV Humvee, unarmed, 1,200 tokens. HMMWV M2.50 Cal turret, 1,800 tokens. ATV quad bike, 300 tokens. Inigo could barely contain himself. Okay, yeah, I'm never going back to bows and magic missiles. Screw that. But one thing was bugging him. System, he said aloud, hoping for a response. How do I get tokens? The floating interface pinged and updated immediately. System notification. Welcome to the Shop of Freedom, Patriot. Token acquisition methods. Defeat hostile creatures. Tokens based on danger level. Complete quests or contracts. Earn tokens plus bonus items. Achieve heroic acts. Save civilians, topple tyrants, win battles. Sell loot. Trade fantasy items for tokens via the exchange tab. Bonus. Daily login reward. 5 tokens per real-world day. Well, that makes sense, Inigo muttered. A grind system. He checked the inventory tab next and found Patriot Starter Pack unopened. 50 tokens, starter bonus. Combat Knife, standard issue. Cargo Pants and Tactical Hoodie, light armor, no bonuses. With a smirk, he selected the Patriot Starter Pack and confirmed Open. A dramatic loading animation played, a mini American flag flapping in the wind, before a notification window popped. Patriot Starter Pack rewards. Kevlar Vest, Level 2, 1x. Medical Kit, Field Grade, 1x. The Glock materialized in a soft glow beside him on the grass. It wasn't magical. It was matte black, slide-oiled, mag full, and ready to bark freedom. He picked it up with reverence, checking the slide and sights. Years of gaming told him exactly how to hold it, reload it, and shoot it. The vest fit snug. The boots were tight but sturdy. It felt like he was about to queue up in Warzone. Except this wasn't a game. This is real, isn't it? He said quietly, half to himself. If this is real, then he was grateful that he had received such awesome ability. Imagine if he doesn't have one. His Ice Guy life would be doomed and depressing from the start. Inigo was still on the spot when he appeared in this world. Usually, a character of an Ice Guy main character would be reincarnated in a village or a house or something that is the civilization. But his case was different, though not unique. This one is harder as he would have to wander around and find a village where he could gain information about this new world. And wandering, though awesome it may sound, is a scary venture when he doesn't know what's lurking around these places. Sure, he is armed with a pistol, but the Glock 19 doesn't have the kind of firepower that could take down something like a dragon or an ogre or whatever fantasy monster this place might throw at him. He had 90 rounds and a decent vest, sure, but if some kind of wolf the size of a cow came barreling out of the trees, that Kevlar wasn't going to do much. All right, he muttered, tightening the strap on the medical kit slung across his back. Let's do this the old-fashioned way. Step 1, find people. Step 2, gain information about this word. Step 3, survive. He glanced around the clearing again. Tall trees circled the area, pine and oak, from the looks of it. Grass up to his knees. No beaten path. No road. No map. Yeah, the system didn't give him a map. There was a tab for inventory, shop, token balance, and combat logs, but no minimap, no GPS, no magical radar. Guess I really gotta go Skyrim mode, he grunted, then picked a direction, toward the rising sun. East. Always a good start. At least I think that's east. He moved cautiously through the underbrush, Glock held low but ready, finger off the trigger. He kept his breathing steady and his steps quiet, just like he'd practiced in hundreds of virtual matches. The biggest difference now was that there were no teammates to ping the enemy and no respawn timer if he messed up. The forest grew denser the farther he walked. Birds chirped overhead. A few squirrels scattered up the trees at the sound of his boots. So far, so good. He kept moving in a straight line, leaving small scratches on bark with his knife, so he could tell if he doubled back. After 30 minutes, his stomach grumbled. MREs, he muttered, tapping open the shop tab and checking the foods and supplies section. 10 tokens each, ugh. Not worth it. Gotta find real food or a village. Another 30 minutes passed. No sounds of people. No smell of smoke or food. Just trees. Trees. More trees. A branch cracked behind him. Inigo stopped immediately. His entire body went still. He crouched slightly, drawing his Glock and scanning his surroundings. System, he whispered. Any enemy detection perks? The interface remained silent. Right. No aim assist either. He pivoted slowly, scanning the treeline. Another snap. Closer this time. Then rustling leaves. From between the brush, a pair of glowing yellow eyes locked onto him. Wolf, Inigo muttered. No. Bigger. It stepped into the light, thick gray fur, paws the size of his head, a scar running across its snout. A dire wolf? Whatever it was, it looked pissed. Yeah, I detected that too, Inigo muttered and continued. Is this going to be my first encounter? His hands shook. He may be a hardcore FPS gamer, but he hadn't actually shot a gun in real life. Mouse clicks weren't the same as trigger pulls. Crosshairs weren't the same as aiming down real iron sights. And dying in a match didn't mean dying. The wolf snarled again, its yellow eyes gleaming with hunger or malice, or both. The dire wolf lowered its head. Its thick muscles coiled like springs. Wait for it, he whispered. Wait. Then the beast lunged. His first shot went wide, punching into a tree trunk. He adjusted mid-recoil and fired again. Bang! Bang! One round struck the wolf in the chest, the other grazed its neck. The creature barely slowed down. He sidestepped, diving to the left, rolling over damp grass and twigs as the beast barreled past him, snapping at air. His heartbeat pounded in his ears like a war drum. Dirt smeared his sleeves as he scrambled to his knees. The wolf spun with terrifying speed, already recovering, blood foaming at its mouth now. Come on, come on, come on. 3 shots, center mass. The wolf staggered, growling, but didn't fall. Inigo backed up, Glock still aimed. I swear you are way too tanky for a dog. The beast lunged again. He sidestepped once more, barely dodging the snapping jaws, and jammed the barrel of his Glock right under its jaw. The wolf's body jerked. Then it collapsed limp. Silence fell across the woods. Inigo remained still, Glock shaking in his grip. Smoke curled from the barrel. The wolf's body twitched once, then stopped. Target eliminated, 10 tokens gained. New token balance, 80 tokens. A wave of adrenaline dumped out of him all at once. His knees nearly buckled. He had killed something. Not in a game. Not a headshot trophy. This was real. The smell of blood hit him next. Strong. Metallic. Warm. He holstered the Glock and took several deep breaths to calm himself. Then the HUD blinked again. Exchange available, salvage dire wolf. Dire wolf pelt, plus 6 tokens. Untreated beast meat, plus 2 tokens. Wolf Fong X2, plus 1 token. Total salvage value, 9 tokens. He accepted without hesitation. The body shimmered into motes of light and vanished. Tokens jingled into his count. New token balance, 89 tokens. He looked down at himself. His vest had bite marks, but no damage. The Glock still had more than half a mag. That was only one creature, but he could already tell how fast things could go sideways. He was no longer shaking. Not because he wasn't afraid, but because that fear had just saved his life. This wasn't a game anymore. Here, if you didn't shoot first, you died. All right, he muttered. No time to cry about it. I need a place to sleep. Water. Food. With that, he resumed walking. The last orange hues of twilight faded behind the canopy, replaced by a creeping, inky darkness that made every tree look like a monster and every gust of wind feel like a whisper in his ear. Crickets chirped, owls hooted, and somewhere in the distance, something howled again. Inigo tightened the straps on his vest and glanced up through the leaves. The moon was out, half covered by clouds, casting just enough light to see vague outlines, but not enough to feel safe. He was still in the middle of nowhere. Just trees. Trees. More damn trees. Okay, he said aloud, voice cracking slightly. New plan, don't die tonight. His legs ached. His stomach had been growling for the past hour. He was starting to get cold. The forest at night wasn't just eerie, it was hostile. Everything rustled. Everything moved. Every broken twig felt like the next dire wolf. He tapped open the shop. Please have camping gear. Please. And under the Foods and Supplies and Equipments tab, there was a thing. One-person tactical tent, camouflaged. 25 tokens. Sleeping bag all-weather. 10 tokens. Portable LED lantern, 5 tokens. Fire starter kit, 2 tokens. Basic cooking pan, 3 tokens. Collapsible water jug, 5L, 4 tokens. Canned beef stew, heat and eat, 6 tokens. Inigo blinked. Wait, this is cheap. He scrolled further. Everything was practically budget tier, even compared to the weapons. He guessed it made sense. Camping wasn't as flashy as blowing something up, and the system clearly had its priorities. He quickly tallied up what he needed and hit purchase. Items purchased, 55 tokens. New token balance, 34 tokens. A soft shimmer appeared in front of him as each item materialized in the grass with a dull clunk. Tent. Sleeping bag. Lantern. Fire starter. A steaming can of beef stew. His stomach growled again, violently. Screw setup, he muttered and tore open the can. The stew was already warm, just like it said. It smelled surprisingly good. Chunky meat, bits of potato, thick gravy. He downed it in minutes. It wasn't gourmet, but to someone who hadn't eaten since dying, it was heaven. He wiped his mouth with his sleeve, sighed in relief, then finally stood and grabbed the tent. The setup was idiot-proof. It popped into place with a few clicks and snaps. No rope. No hammering. Just tactical fast assembly. He threw the sleeping bag inside and set the lantern near the flap, turning it on to a low setting. The soft LED glow pushed the shadows away. Just a little. He crouched outside the tent, glancing around the treeline with the Glock resting on his knee. System, he whispered. Any alerts? Nearby threats? Still nothing. The HUD didn't ping. He double-checked the tent's camo cover. It blended well into the surrounding foliage. Almost too well. From a few feet away, it would look like a lump of dirt and leaves. Inigo crawled inside, zipped up the flap halfway, and set the Glock beside his sleeping bag within reach. The sleeping bag was warm. Soft. It adjusted to his body temperature automatically. He let his head fall back and exhaled deeply. The tent kept the sounds out, but not completely. He could still hear the wind, the occasional crunch of a twig, and the shifting of night creatures beyond the canvas. This world is crazy, he muttered to himself. Guns, monsters, systems, and I'm camping like it's a damn survival sim. He stared at the lantern's glow. I need to find civilization. Get quests. Token grind. Stock up. This Glock won't cut it forever. Might need a rifle soon. But that would cost more. A lot more. He'd burned over half his token stash just staying alive and warm tonight. At least now he knew what was out here. And more importantly, what he needed to do. Inigo pulled the sleeping bag tight, closed his eyes, and muttered one last thing. I'm not dying in a tent. I'm going to be the guy who brought freedom to this fantasy hellhole. Morning came with a chill breeze and birdsong. Inigo's eyes fluttered open. For a moment, he expected to see the cracked ceiling of his favorite internet cafe, maybe even the glow of a monitor blinking a rank-up screen. But no, it was canvas above him, dimly lit by the morning sun peeking through the trees. It was real. All of it. The Glock on his chest. The tactical gear. The weirdly intuitive camping setup. And the bloodstain he'd washed off his gloves from the dire wolf the night before. Yep, he mumbled, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. Still ice-guyed. Still not in diamond. With a yawn, he stepped out of the tent. Dew clung to the grass, and his breath fogged faintly in the crisp morning air. The forest looked calmer. Less haunted. But he wasn't dumb enough to lower his guard. He stretched his limbs and tapped the system HUD. How do I pack this thing up? The moment he said it, a new prompt blinked into existence. Would you like to store all active camping gear in your inventory? Seriously? That easy, he muttered, then tapped yes. In an instant, the tent, sleeping bag, lantern, and even the empty stew can shimmered and vanished in little pulses of blue light. Items stored in inventory. Okay, I officially love this system. He took a moment to check his remaining tokens, 34, then holstered his Glock and started walking. This time, he wasn't aimlessly wandering. His pace had purpose. He didn't know where civilization was, but after last night, he knew he had to find it fast. And luck, for once, was on his side. After about an hour of trekking, he heard something unusual. Inigo froze, crouched low in the brush, and peeked through the trees. An actual dirt road, carved between the forest with ruts and wheel tracks. And coming down it was a wooden carriage drawn by 2 brown horses. The carriage wasn't anything fancy, just a covered wagon with wooden wheels and a simple driver's bench. But it was flanked by 2 armed riders, one on each side, wearing leather armor and steel helmets. They carried spears on their backs and short swords on their belts. The carriage itself was closed in the back, with canvas flaps drawn tight. Probably carrying cargo. Or people. Inigo stayed low, observing. His instincts screamed to make contact, but so did his caution. He had a Glock. They had swords. He didn't know the language. He didn't know the laws. And if he walked up to them wearing foreign clothes and holding a metal stick, they might assume he was a bandit. "Think Inigo," he muttered. "You don't want to get stabbed just for saying hi." Still, it was the first trace of civilization. He couldn't afford to just let it pass. He took a deep breath and made a decision. Keeping his Glock holstered and hands raised above his head, he stepped out from the brush and into the road. The reaction was instant. The riders pulled on their reins, halting their horses in place. Spears were drawn in a flash. One rider even unsheathed his sword. The driver stood up from the carriage bench, narrowing his eyes. "Oi, who goes there?" Inigo blinked. He understood that. "A lost traveler?" he said cautiously, lowering his hands just a bit. "I'm not armed. I am armed, but I'm not using it." That's an important distinction. The riders glanced at each other. The man on the left trotted forward, his spear angled downward but ready. "You're not from around here, are you?" "Not even a little bit," Inigo said, trying to smile. "Also, this may sound weird, but what's the name of this country?" The man gave him a skeptical look. "You don't even know where you are?" "I hit my head. Real bad. Memory loss. Very tragic," Inigo lied, giving an exaggerated shrug. "So yeah, country. You're in the kingdom of Eldrith," the driver replied, still watching him with narrowed eyes. "This road leads to Valebrook, closest village to these woods." Finally, Inigo nearly collapsed in relief. "I've been trying to find a village since yesterday," he said honestly. "I'd really appreciate it if I could, maybe hitch a ride? Or just follow the carriage at a safe and respectful distance." The rider who approached him frowned. "That depends. Are you a bandit?" Inigo gestured to himself. "Do I look like a bandit?" They all stared at his hoodie, cargo pants, and combat boots. His face was that of a teenage boy with no unremarkable traits on it. Then their eyes fell to the Glock on his hip. "What is that on your hips?" "Ah, it's nothing. It's just a toy of mine." The rider didn't buy it. "A toy?" the man echoed, eyebrow twitching as his hand gripped his spear tighter. "That's a strange toy to strap to your hip like a sword." Inigo laughed nervously and patted the Glock like it was a family pet. "Yup, totally useless. Decorative. Cosplay even. I'm a performer. Traveling bard. Weird clothes, strange tools, lost memory, very authentic." The other rider trotted up, an older man with a stubbled jaw and squinting eyes. "Never heard of a bard dressing like a city thief. But he doesn't feel like a threat." He stared a bit longer, then added, "Just smells like piss." Inigo forced a smile. "I camped. In the woods. Alone. Without deodorant." The driver finally exhaled and waved his hand. "Enough gawking. Let him ride in the back. We're late as is." The younger rider gave him one last warning look before gesturing toward the carriage. "No funny moves. You do something that we don't like, we will end you instantly." Inigo nodded quickly. "Wouldn't dream of it." He climbed into the back of the carriage, careful not to step on the stacked crates or burlap sacks. The inside was cramped but covered, smelling of dried herbs, raw wool, and what might have been onions. He wedged himself between two boxes and settled in, keeping his hands visible. As the carriage began moving again, he let out a slow breath. Civilization. Finally. After everything, killing a dire wolf, surviving the night, rationing tokens. This was his first real chance at getting information, shelter, maybe even a quest board or shop. The ride was bumpy. Every pothole in the dirt road felt like a minor earthquake, and Inigo kept getting jabbed in the ribs by a suspiciously pointy turnip poking through a sack. But none of it dampened his mood. After about 30 minutes of silence, the canvas flapped slightly, and one of the riders peeked in from the side. "Name?" the older man asked gruffly. "That a southern name?" "Probably," he said quickly. "I wouldn't know. Memory loss, remember?" The rider grunted. "Fair. I'm Garrick. The other one's Colin. Driver's Brund." Inigo nodded. "Nice to meet you all. I appreciate the ride, really." Garrick gave a short grunt of acknowledgement, then added, "You might want to keep your head down when we enter Valebrook. Folks aren't used to strangers showing up in weird clothes with metal tools. Especially after what happened last week." Inigo's ears perked up. "What happened?" Garrick stared for a moment. "Bandits. Attacked a merchant caravan near the river bend. 4 dead. Whole town's on edge." "Great. Of course it couldn't be a peaceful starter village." He was expecting chickens and side quests, not murder and mistrust. "You think they'll mistake me for one of them?" Inigo asked cautiously. "If you act shady, yeah," Garrick said bluntly. "Just follow Brun's lead. Keep your mouth shut unless spoken to. Don't wave that toy around." Inigo leaned back, his fingers tapping idly on the grip of his Glock. The word bandits stuck in his mind. If bandits were active nearby, that could mean quests. Token-granting quests. "Hey, quick question," he said. "Does your village have any kind of bounty board? Or, a place where someone could get hired for odd jobs. Garrick squinted at him again. You looking to work? More like looking to be useful. An hour passed before the woods finally began to thin out. Inigo leaned forward and peeked through a small gap in the canvas, and saw it. It wasn't much, a modest village nestled in a valley clearing, surrounded by a low wooden palisade. Smoke rose from chimneys. Farmers worked small fenced plots. Children chased each other near a water pump. At the far end, a stone church rose like a sentinel, its bell tower gleaming under the morning sun. There were no high walls, no guards on turrets, just simple rural life. His heart swelled a bit. Finally, a save point. The carriage slowed as they reached the gate. Two men with spears stood on either side, eyeing the travelers and raising the wooden barrier after a short exchange with Brund. As the cart rolled in, people stopped and stared. And not in a good way. Inigo could feel it, the weight of their eyes. Suspicion. Whispers. A little girl pointed at him and tugged her mother's skirt. "Mommy, what's that man wearing?" The mother quickly turned her child away. Brund halted the wagon near a central square and climbed down. "End of the line," he said flatly. "Garrick, take the lad to the hall. Let the elder deal with him." Garrick waved him out. "Come on." Inigo followed, keeping his Glock hidden under his hoodie as best he could. His boots crunched softly against packed dirt as they walked toward the largest building in the village. A hall with wooden columns and a slate roof, likely the local government center. Two guards stood outside, clearly volunteers. One wore an apron over his armor. The other was chewing on a carrot. Garrick whispered something to them, and after a moment, they nodded and stepped aside. Inside, the hall was warm and surprisingly clean. A large hearth burned at the far end. A map of the region was pinned to the wall, drawn in charcoal and labeled in rough script. At a long wooden table sat a woman in her 50s, gray-streaked hair tied back, spectacles perched on her nose. She looked up as they entered. "Another stranger?" she said flatly. Garrick shrugged. "Found him in the forest. Claims memory loss. Carries strange tools. Says he's looking for work." The woman folded her hands. "Name?" She gestured to a stool. "Sit. Where are you from?" "Don't know. Memory loss." "What do you remember?" "That I'm good at shooting things." Garrick coughed beside him. The woman blinked slowly. She sighed and stood up. "We're short on guards. Too many mouths. Too few hands. You want work. Prove you're useful. Give me something to shoot," he said instinctively. She raised an eyebrow. He blinked. I'm skilled in ranged combat." "Right. Well, we do have some quests posted." "Garrick, show him the board. Let him pick something small. If he survives that, we'll talk again. If not, no loss." "Understood," Garrick said, motioning to Inigo. "Come on." As they exited the hall, Inigo let out a low whistle. "Friendly place." "You caught us at a bad time," Garrick muttered. "Bandits, famine, taxes, and now weirdos walking out of the forest with shiny black sticks. You think people are going to throw you a feast? Fair." Inigo couldn't really argue with that. They crossed the square to a notice board nailed to a crooked post. Several parchment sheets fluttered in the wind, pinned with dull iron nails. Garrick pointed with the butt of his spear. "This here is the job board. Don't expect anything glamorous. Mostly missing livestock, pest control, hauling firewood, that sort of thing." Inigo scanned the sheets quickly. The text was readable, thankfully. Whatever language it was, he could understand it. Maybe a perk from the Shop of Freedom. Posted, missing chickens, Farmer Hobb. Posted, goblin sightings by the creek. Posted, wolves near the northern ridge reward, 15 copper. Posted, strange noises from the abandoned mine, inquiry only. He tapped the goblin one instinctively. "This one, goblins by the creek." Garrick raised a brow. "You sure?" Inigo checked his token count. Still at 34. Enough for ammo or a small supply purchase. But not enough for a rifle yet. If goblins gave tokens, and he assumed they would, this could be the grind he needed. "Yeah," he nodded. "Let me handle it." Garrick tore the parchment from the board. "Then take this to Farmer Hobb." He filed the report. "Northwest edge of town." "That way." "Very well, I'll take my leave." Inigo accepted the page and headed off, walking past villagers who gave him side-eye glances and steered their kids away. One even muttered, "Outsider troublemaker," under their breath. He ignored them. If he wanted to survive here, he needed to earn respect and tokens. The walk to Farmer Hobb's land took about 15 minutes. The field was fallow, and the farmhouse looked like it hadn't been painted in decades. A burly man in a straw hat stood near a coop, muttering angrily while examining broken boards. "You Hobb?" Inigo asked. The man turned. His brow furrowed at Inigo's outfit, but he nodded. "That'd be me." "You from the village?" "Sort of. Hear about the goblins." "Job board." "You." Hobb barked a laugh. "You look like a lost city brat." Inigo smiled thinly. "Let me worry about that. Just point me to where you saw them. Hob scratched his chin. By the creek to the north. Took my chickens last night. Heard squeals and saw small shadows scurry off. They build nests near the rocks this time of year. 3. Maybe 5. Not more than 7. 7 goblins. He could handle that. Thanks, Inigo said, already turning. He checked his Glock. Magazine still had about 11 rounds left. He had 1 spare mag in his inventory, plus the knife if things got too close. He followed the dirt trail toward the creek. It took another 10 minutes of careful movement, ducking between trees and staying alert. Birds fled overhead as he stepped into the streambed. They were short, green-skinned, with long ears and jagged teeth. 3 of them hunched around something dead, probably one of the chickens. 2 more lingered near the water, tossing pebbles. Just like in fantasy animes, they looked all the same. Hostile creatures detected. Inigo crouched low behind a bush and drew his Glock. He lined up the first shot carefully, just like in Valorant. The goblin dropped, blood spraying the rocks. The others shrieked in surprise. Bang! Another dropped. The remaining 3 scrambled. 1 charged at him with a spear. 1 in the chest. 1 in the leg. The last goblin bolted. Inigo moved forward, keeping low. Not letting you run. Bang! Final shot hit center mass. The goblin stumbled and fell. Targets eliminated, 5 tokens earned. Loot available for salvage. He salvaged the corpses without hesitation. Goblin ears x5, 5 tokens. Crude dagger, 1 token. Raw meat, 2 tokens. Total earned, 13 tokens. New token balance, 47 tokens. Inigo reloaded his Glock and exhaled slowly. He checked the area for more threats. Nothing. He'd done it. First real quest. It was quite easy. If he wasn't reincarnated with a military shop system, or shop of freedom, he would have dealt with them with a sword, which may look cool in his imagination but terrifying in real life. Now he has to bring some proof that he killed the goblins, and as for the farmer's chicken, seeing that there was none, it's safe to say that they were consumed. Anyways, proof, he grabbed his dagger from inventory and then chopped the ears and stored them in his inventory. Farmer Hob was still by the chicken coop when Inigo returned. The old man had just finished boarding up a hole in the side when he looked up, and immediately squinted at what Inigo was holding. Is that? He trailed off. Inigo grinned and dropped the string of ears on a nearby fence post. They made a wet, squelchy sound as they landed. 5 goblins, he said. Dead. Probably the ones that took your chickens. Hob stared, silent for a moment. Then, as if realizing something, he stepped closer and jabbed a finger toward the gore-covered twine. Where did you get those? Inigo blinked. Ah, the goblins. You actually killed them? Hob said, eyes wide. Alone. With what? You don't have a bow, and you didn't carry a crossbow when you left. The important thing is that I killed them. The farmer stepped back, expression unreadable. He looked down at the goblin ears again, then back at Inigo. I'll be damned, he muttered. You actually did it. Sure did. And not to be rude, but... Inigo rubbed his gloved fingers together, miming the universal gesture of show me the money. There wasn't a reward posted, so I figured now's a good time to, negotiate. Inigo raised an eyebrow. Look, I just risked my life and eliminated 5 pests that could have killed livestock or maybe even people. That should be worth something, right? Hob crossed his arms. You think killing a few scrawny greenskins is worth silver? Do you have any idea how close I came to being stabbed by a goblin spear? They ambushed me. I was 1 stumble away from getting turned into a pin cushion. Fine. Since you killed them and you have proof, I'll give you 6 copper coins each. Inigo stared at the weathered old farmer like the man had just tried to pay him in Monopoly money. 30 copper coins? He repeated, voice flat. Farmer Hob nodded, completely unfazed. Yup, that's more than fair. For goblin hunting? Inigo squinted. That's like fantasy minimum wage. I could have died out there. They were goblins, Hob grunted. Not ogres. Not bandits. Goblins. And besides, you took care of it quickly. Doesn't that mean it was easy? Inigo wanted to argue, but he held back. He didn't want to get on the bad side of the only man in town who'd hired him, even if it was barely a gig economy rate. All right, he sighed, rubbing his temples. Give me the coins. Hob reached into a pouch on his belt and tossed a small drawstring sack his way. It jingled pitifully. Inigo caught it, peeked inside, and confirmed the count. 30 coppers, rough minted and dented. No shine, no polish. Do you guys have an exchange rate system? Inigo asked. Hob raised a brow. What in the God's name is that? Like, does copper turn into silver? Silver into gold. Oh, yeah. 100 copper for 1 silver. 100 silver for 1 gold. Simple. What can I buy with this? Hob snorted. A meal. Maybe a bed for the night if the innkeeper's feeling generous. Inigo stared at the bag in his hand, then back at Hob. You're telling me this. He shook the pouch, the coins jingling like a sad tambourine. is worth a bowl of soup and a pillow? Don't forget the hay mattress, Hob added with a dry grin. Right. Deluxe accommodations. Inigo sighed again and pocketed the coins. It was better than nothing, but just barely. Still, a win was a win. And more importantly, he was now officially a man with coin in his pocket and blood on his gloves. In this world, that was practically a rite of passage. Well, he said, adjusting his hoodie and giving Hob a nod. If more goblins show up, you know who to call. I'll be sure to tell the town council we've got a strange lad who kills with weird magic and asks too many questions, Hob muttered, returning to his coop repairs. Inigo turned back toward Valebrook, shaking his head. By the time Inigo returned to the village square, the sun was starting to dip past the rooftops, casting long shadows across the cobblestones. The air smelled of hearth smoke and boiled cabbage. Villagers passed him warily, still unsure of what to make of the odd newcomer with city clothes and a confident swagger. He pulled open his HUD. Between the goblin rewards and salvages, it wasn't much, but it was something. He could buy more food, maybe a piece of better armor, or he tapped the weapons tab again. The Scar H tempted him like a forbidden snack, but at 220 tokens, it was well beyond his current budget. Even the AK-47 was still out of reach at 130 tokens. He sighed, scrolling further. Remington 870 to 90 tokens. Mossberg 500 to 85 tokens. Saiga 12 semi-auto. 140 tokens. Tempting, he muttered. But not yet. Not until I know what I'm facing next. He backed out and tapped into the ammo packs tab. 9mm ammo, X120 rounds, 30 tokens. 5.56 NATO, X120 rounds, 35 tokens. 7.62 by 39mm, X100 rounds, 35 tokens. .50 AE, X50 rounds, 40 tokens. With a sigh, he bought a 9mm pack and immediately reloaded his spare magazine. No sense in running dry when goblins were just the tutorial. With his wallet looking sad again, he figured it was time to look for the inn. Garrick had mentioned it briefly. Near the well, right side of the square, with the squeaky sign. Sure enough, he found it a few minutes later. A rickety two-story building with a swinging sign that read The Hollow Mug. It squeaked like a rusty hinge in a horror game with every breeze. Light poured through the shutters, and the faint sound of mugs clinking and muted laughter spilled into the street. Inigo pushed the door open, instantly greeted by warmth, firelight, and the scent of stew. A dozen or so patrons occupied the tables, mostly farmers and traveling merchants. A few glanced his way, then returned to their drinks. A woman behind the counter looked up from cleaning a mug. She was middle-aged, with kind eyes and sleeves rolled to her elbows. You look new. Just got in today, he said. Name's Inigo. Got any rooms? Only one left. Hey, betting, nothing fancy. 8 copper for the night. Includes stew and water. Inigo immediately pulled the drawstring pouch from his pocket and counted out the coins. Sold. She handed him a wooden token with the number 7 carved into it. Upstairs, last door on the right. Food's by the hearth. He nodded gratefully and sat near the fire. A moment later, a steaming bowl of stew was placed before him, rich with potatoes, bits of meat, and carrots. Basic, but hearty. As he ate, he opened the system HUD again. Still 17 tokens left. Still underleveled. Still undergunned. He knew what he needed, power. And to get power, he needed tokens. And to get tokens, he needed a job. I am going to deal with this tomorrow. I have to rest. After finishing the last bite of stew and downing the accompanying mug of lukewarm water, Inigo stood from the hearth with a groan. His legs felt heavier now that the adrenaline had worn off. The faint ache in his shoulders reminded him of the earlier fight, the goblin ambush, and the long walk back into town. Still, he felt okay. Not happy, exactly, but no longer like he was about to collapse in the woods. That was something. He climbed the narrow wooden stairs of the hollow mug with slow steps, floorboards creaking under his boots. The inn smelled like old wood, dust, and faint mildew. Not ideal, but at least it wasn't blood and mud. At the top of the stairs, he found room 7, shoved the wooden token into the slot beside the door, and heard a soft click. He pushed it open. It was a room. Technically. A small square space barely wider than a broom closet, with a single hay-stuffed mattress on a low wooden frame. A candle holder on the wall provided the only light. A chipped ceramic bowl sat in the corner, which he really hoped wasn't meant for drinking water. Inigo dropped his bag and stared around. Where's the bathroom? No response, of course. He checked under the bed, behind the door, even behind the thin, moth-eaten curtain that barely qualified as a window cover. You're telling me this entire room is bed, bowl, candle. And that's it? He turned back to the hallway and stuck his head out. Excuse me, he called toward the stairs. A gruff voice replied from below. Outhouse is around the back of the inn. Don't piss in the bowl. Inigo stared back into the room. Too late to clarify that now. he muttered under his breath. With a sigh, he shut the door and dropped onto the bed. The hay mattress let out a squeaky puff of dust, making him cough. "This sucks," he said aloud. And then, as he stared at the ceiling, reality settled in. This world may have magic. It may have quests. It may even have his ridiculous Shop of Freedom system. But it didn't have indoor plumbing. No LED desk lamp. No Wi-Fi. No electric fan humming at night. No soft, microfiber blanket from Shopee. No toasted egg sandwich from the 7-Eleven down the street. No heated toilet seat. Just a room with itchy hay and an outdoor toilet that probably reeked of 1,000 sins. He groaned and rubbed his face. "I miss home." He didn't expect to feel that so soon. In all the anime he watched, the Ice Guy protagonists rarely mourned the little things. Sure, they missed their families sometimes, or their old lives in broad strokes, but no one ever whined about the lack of bidets or McDonald's hash browns at 6 a.m. Even the annoying loading screens and smuff-ridden FPS lobbies. I had Discord. I had a headset that lit up. I had an RGB mouse, damn it. Now he had a rusty dagger in his inventory and a room that could give tetanus just by sitting in it too long. He rolled onto his side, tucked his arms under the scratchy pillow, and muttered bitterly, "Fantasy world, my ass." The candle flickered slightly from a draft. From somewhere outside, a distant howl echoed through the night. Probably a wolf, or something worse. He shivered and reached over to pull his Glock close, placing it beside the pillow like a security blanket. "Better than a magic wand, I guess," he whispered. He closed his eyes, letting the exhaustion win. But sleep didn't come easy. The bed was too firm, the room too quiet, the pillow too thin. His muscles ached in unfamiliar ways, and his thoughts wouldn't shut up. Even though he'd survived his first day, all he could think about were the days to come. More goblins. More danger. Bigger quests. Stronger monsters. Bandits. Ogres. Eventually, despite everything, his breathing slowed. But the last thing he muttered before drifting off? "Tomorrow. I'm buying a damn rifle." Inigo shot upright in bed. For a second, he didn't know why. The candle had long since burned out, the room pitch dark except for the faint moonlight leaking in through the torn curtain. Real, blood-curdling screaming. He lunged for the Glock beside his pillow and reached instinctively for the HUD. But the noise outside the inn was all the confirmation he needed. People were shouting, men, women, even children. Some were crying. Others were yelling in frantic panic. The unmistakable clang of steel against steel rang out from the distance, followed by something even worse. The guttural, high-pitched shrieks of something not human. He threw the door open and rushed into the hallway, barely remembering to pocket the wooden key token. Other guests were spilling out of their rooms. One man in a nightshirt screamed "Raiders" and ran past him barefoot. A woman clutched a crying toddler and yelled for her husband. Inigo pushed down the stairs 2 steps at a time and crashed through the tavern doors into the square. Valebrook was under attack. The wooden palisade that surrounded the village was ablaze, bright orange flames licking the sky. Smoke poured into the night like ink. Villagers ran in every direction. Some with buckets, others with pitchforks, and many with nothing at all. Horses screamed. Chickens flapped wildly. The sheer chaos of it overwhelmed the peaceful town like a wave. And in the middle of it, but not just goblins. Small, scaly lizard-like creatures darted among them. Kobolds, armed with jagged bone spears and rusted swords. They skittered over fences, knocked over market carts, and chased after anything that moved. Inigo stared, frozen for half a second as his brain processed what he was seeing. One man lay slumped near a well, blood pouring from a wound in his chest. Another, someone Inigo vaguely remembered from the inn, was being dragged by 2 kobolds into the shadows. His heart slammed into his ribs. His breath caught. This wasn't a side quest. This was a nightmare. But something inside him clicked. A sound. A feeling. A flash of muscle memory honed through years of gaming, now repurposed into raw survival instinct. He ducked behind a wooden crate and drew his Glock. "System," he hissed. "Any enemy tags?" "Hostiles detected range. 50 m, quantity, 19. The HUD marked them with faint red silhouettes. Goblins on rooftops. Kobolds by the well. 2 more climbing over the burning wall. And right now, he was in the middle of it all with 1 pistol and 17 tokens in his pocket. "Think fast," he muttered, flipping open the shop on the side of his vision. No time to browse. No time to think. He slammed into explosives. Flashbang, M84, 30 tokens. C4 remote charge, 150. Then something cheaper. Firestarter kit, 2 tokens. He slammed the buy button, and the kit appeared in his hand with a shimmer. He grabbed the small magnesium stick and flint, and scrambled toward a pile of dry firewood near the blacksmith's stall. A few globs of oil from the forge still stained the ground. He struck the flint hard, once, twice, until sparks ignited the kindling. In seconds, a blaze lit up beside him. Then he pulled a sack of dried barley off a cart and tossed it in. The fire popped. Snapped. Smoke billowed out in a thick, acrid cloud. Kobolds shrieked nearby and turned toward the smoke, just as Inigo popped up behind a market stall. Bang! One in the neck. Bang! Another between the eyes. He ducked again as a goblin hurled a spear his way. It clattered harmlessly against the side of a water trough. He peeked out and aimed again. A third goblin toppled from the rooftop. Then something crashed beside him. Inigo spun around just in time to see a kobold land 10 feet from him, eyes glowing red. He fired once, missed. Fired again, hit the shoulder. The kobold slammed into him. They went down in a heap. Inigo grunted, elbowed the creature in the jaw, grabbed his combat knife, and drove it into its side with a desperate yell. Blood sprayed his arm. The kobold thrashed once, then stopped moving. He pushed it off, panting, heart racing. More enemies. More screams. Someone nearby cried for help. Plus 12 tokens acquired. Hostiles eliminated. New balance, 29 tokens. His hand shook as he reloaded his Glock. There is still more, he muttered, but no time to think. He ran toward the source of the scream. A young boy was cornered against a wooden cart by 2 goblins with crude axes. Inigo didn't hesitate. 2 flashes. 2 bodies dropped. The boy stared at him, wide-eyed, then ran. Inigo didn't follow. He turned, scanned the square. The old guard fought like a beast, spear flashing, parrying 2 kobolds at once. One jumped him from behind. Inigo raised his Glock. The kobold's skull exploded in midair. Garrick glanced back, grinned, then nodded. Inigo returned the nod. New balance, 37 tokens. It was chaos, but he was adapting. For the first time, he felt something familiar. A fight he could win. He ducked, rolled, aimed, fired. The Glock barked freedom into the night. Villagers screamed. Fires raged. But slowly, inch by inch, the tide began to turn. By the time the last goblin fell, Inigo was down to 2 bullets and a bloody knife. The square was a mess, bodies, flames, splintered wood. But the village still stood. Valebrook had survived. Plus 2,000 tokens, heroic action bonus. Plus 800 tokens, civilians saved. Inigo stared at the screen dumbfounded. Holy crap, he breathed. His legs gave out, and he sat right there on the blood-slick cobblestones. The Glock dangled in his hand. Somewhere off to the side, a horse neighed wildly. The fire crackled near the edge of the palisade. Villagers were shouting orders, calling names, dragging the wounded. But he couldn't hear them clearly. It all sounded muffled, like he was underwater. 8,000 tokens. He could buy decent gear with those tokens, and it made sense to him now. So the more heroic you do, the more tokens you'll receive. He scrolled slowly, eyes wide like a kid at a candy store with too much allowance. This is it, Inigo muttered, a grin creeping across his soot-stained face. This is the Call of Duty dream. He could afford any of them. No, he could afford all of them if he wanted. With over 8,000 tokens burning in his virtual wallet, he wasn't just a survivor anymore. He was about to become a walking armory. Suddenly, someone called him. Garrick limped toward him, his left leg bloodied and dragging slightly, but his grip on the spear still firm. Smoke clung to his armor. A cut ran across his cheek, oozing crimson, but the old guard's eyes were sharp, more alive now than Inigo had ever seen. You alive? Garrick asked, chest heaving. Inigo gave a shaky laugh. Barely. But yeah, still breathing. You. I've had worse. Garrick planted the spear down, using it to support his weight. He looked down at the pistol still clutched in Inigo's hand. That toy of yours, it's not a toy. Inigo hesitated. No, it's not. Garrick nodded slowly. I figured. Whatever that is, it saved lives tonight. You saved lives tonight. The words hit harder than he expected. Thanks, Inigo muttered. Garrick turned his head, surveying the wreckage. The village was still standing, but just barely. Burnt homes. Blood trails. Bodies. The air was filled with the scent of ash and iron. But it could have been far worse. And everyone knew who had tipped the scales. A few villagers started gathering now, hesitantly, eyes drifting toward Inigo. First glances of suspicion. Then curiosity. Then something different. The woman from the inn stood near the well, cradling a small child in her arms. She gave Inigo a single, silent nod. Another man raised a hand in cautious thanks. A boy with soot on his cheeks peeked out from behind a barrel and whispered something to his father. That's him. The outsider. The one who fought. Inigo rose to his feet, brushing dirt from his knees. Garrick watched him quietly, then spoke again. You should see the elder. She'll want to hear about this. Inigo walked beside Garrick in silence. Villagers paused as he passed, their tired, soot-smeared faces lit by flickering torchlight. The suspicion from earlier had faded, replaced by a cautious reverence. He didn't smile. Not because he didn't want to, but because something about the weight of those eyes, those nods, those hushed whispers. It felt heavier than he expected. People had died. Families were shattered. and he had been the one to put a stop to it. Not a knight, not a mage, a gamer with a Glock. They arrived at the hall again, the same place where, just that morning, he was treated like a wandering nuisance. Now, the two guards at the door straightened as he approached. One even stepped aside without needing a word from Garrick. Inside, the elder stood near the hearth, speaking with two villagers. She looked up the moment they entered. Her eyes flicked to Garrick's injured leg, then to Inigo, whose hoodie was torn, blood-stained, and scorched at the edges. The Glock still hung from his hip. "You," she said quietly. "You fought." Inigo gave a small nod. "I did what I had to." Garrick stepped forward with a stiff salute. "Ma'am, I can vouch. He saved over a dozen villagers, including myself. Killed more than half of the enemy force single-handedly. If he wasn't here, Valebrook would have fallen." The elder studied Inigo for a long moment. Then, without a word, she walked to a locked drawer in her desk. She opened it with a brass key and withdrew a small, polished wooden box. She placed it on the table between them, opened the lid, and revealed a silver emblem on a chain, a small iron-forged key shaped with ornate engravings. It shimmered faintly in the firelight. "This," she said, lifting the key from its velvet lining, "is the key to the city." Inigo blinked. "Wait, like literally?" "It is a symbol," she said. "A gesture rarely given. It means you are no longer just a guest in Valebrook. You are one of us, a defender of this land. If you ever return here, you will find shelter, food, and aid." She stepped closer and draped the chain around his neck. The key settled against his chest, still warm from the hearth's glow. "Thank you," Inigo said, voice lower now, more serious. "I didn't expect anything." "Most heroes never do," she replied. "But you've earned it." A few more villagers had gathered near the doorway, watching. Someone began clapping softly. Then someone else joined. Within moments, the small room echoed with scattered applause, not loud, not raucous, but genuine. Inigo stood there, awkwardly shifting his weight. "This is weird," he whispered to Garrick. "Get used to it," the older man muttered back with a smirk. "You just made a name for yourself." The elder cleared her throat. "One more thing. You've shown skill, courage, and decisive action. If you ever require anything, supplies, assistance, even information, you need only ask. The council will approve it." His brows rose. "Wait, really?" She nodded. "You saved Valebrook. That is not easily forgotten." He couldn't help the grin that tugged at his lips. "Okay, that's actually awesome. And one more thing," she added, stepping toward the desk. She handed him a folded parchment. "This is a letter of recommendation. If you choose to travel, present it to any regional lord or town council. It marks you as a hero of Valebrook. New item acquired. Letter of recommendation, Hero of Valebrook. Passive perk unlocked. Local discount, 10% off general goods in towns allied with Eldrith." His HUD lit up with those sweet, satisfying pings. The elder gave him a faint, knowing smile. "Now go. Rest. Heal. Tomorrow the rebuilding begins. But tonight, you sleep not as an outsider, but as our hero." Inigo bowed his head slightly and turned to leave. As he stepped outside into the chilly night, the villagers who remained gave him nods and quiet waves. It wasn't loud. It wasn't over the top. It wasn't anime-level fireworks and confetti. And for Inigo, for the gamer who died in a cramped internet cafe with a plastic mouse in hand, it was the most alive he'd ever felt. He touched the key on his chest and muttered under his breath, "Let's bring some more freedom to this world." And somewhere in the sky above Valebrook, a single star shot across the heavens. The warm crackle of a hearth still echoed faintly in his mind as Inigo stirred under the inn's quilted blanket. A faint draft crept through the cracks in the wooden walls, brushing against his nose and pulling him from the depths of sleep. His body ached in places he hadn't noticed last night. Bruises, sore muscles, maybe even a cracked rib or two, but nothing life-threatening. He blinked slowly, the morning light seeping through the slats of the wooden shutters. For a long moment, he just lay there, staring up at the wooden beams of the ceiling, letting everything settle. The fight, the blood, the villagers, the key. He turned slightly and saw the silver emblem resting on the small nightstand beside his Glock. For a split second, it all felt like a game notification that would disappear once he logged off. But no, this wasn't a game. He was still here, still breathing, still in whatever insane fantasy world he'd been thrown into. And the people outside were already awake. Then there was a notification chime from the system. Earned 50 tokens from daily. He heard it, the murmurs, the footsteps, a soft, respectful hush in the air. Voices exchanging whispers. A knock came at the door. "Inigo?" It was Garrick's voice. Inigo groaned, throwing off the blanket. Yeah, I'm up." He holstered his Glock, half out of habit, half because he felt naked without it, and opened the door. Garrick stood there in a fresh tunic, his leg bandaged but stable. He offered a small smile. "Figured you'd want to come out the quiet way. But well." Inigo stepped out behind him, and stopped. A small crowd had gathered in the hallway. Villagers. Dozens of them. Old men with canes. Children clinging to their mothers. Farmers in dirt-stained overalls. Blacksmiths with soot on their arms. Even the innkeeper and her grumpy husband stood near the front, both looking unusually serious. Instead, as he stepped down the wooden stairs, they parted slowly, creating a path for him. A little girl, no more than 5, stepped forward with a small bouquet of wildflowers. Yellow and white, tied with a ribbon that had clearly seen better days. She held it out to him, eyes wide. Inigo hesitated, then knelt to her level and took the flowers gently. "Thank you," he said quietly. "You saved Mama," she whispered, barely audible. "She's still here because of you." Inigo gave her the softest smile he could muster. "Then it was worth it." Behind him, Garrick cleared his throat. "They all wanted to thank you in their own way. So we told them you'd be waking up around now." "How long was I out?" Inigo asked as he stood again. A few people stepped forward, offering short words of thanks. One man handed him a loaf of bread. Another offered a stitched leather pouch filled with what looked like copper coins. An older woman pressed a hand over his and said, "We'll tell our grandchildren what you did." It was humbling and terrifying, because he didn't feel like a hero. He'd done what needed to be done. That was it. No grand speeches. No divine intervention. Just recoil, muzzle flash, and a bit of luck. A bell rang from the edge of town. Once. Then twice. The sound carried a weight to it, somber, deliberate. Garrick turned his head toward the distant church tower. Funeral bell. Inigo's chest tightened. "Those who fell?" he asked. Garrick nodded. "We lost 12. Could have been more. Should have been more. But thanks to you, it wasn't." The crowd began to disperse quietly, heading toward the modest chapel at the town's northern edge. Garrick placed a hand on Inigo's shoulder. "You don't have to go, but I think they'd appreciate it." "I'll go," Inigo said, already moving. The chapel was nothing like the grand cathedrals he'd seen in games. No towering spires or stained glass. Just a simple wooden structure, painted white, with a small bell hanging above the doorway and rows of chairs set up outside under the morning sky. 12 sheets neatly draped. Inigo stood toward the back, his hands behind his back, the key still hanging over his hoodie. Garrick stood beside him. The elder stood near the front, reading names one by one. Each name was followed by silence. Then the bell rang again. He noticed the little girl from earlier sitting near the front. Her mother, injured, bandaged, held her close. Their faces were solemn, but unbroken. As the ceremony continued, Inigo felt the burn of something he hadn't felt in a long time. Not because he could have done more, but because part of him liked the fight. The rush. The control. But he also knew this much. If he hadn't been there, more graves would be filled today. After the final name was read, the elder spoke again. "Let today be a day of mourning, but also of remembrance. Because amid the fire and blood, a stranger stood with us. And he did not run. He fought." All eyes turned toward Inigo. He didn't speak. Didn't make a grand gesture. Just nodded once firmly. He saw the respect in their faces. Not the kind you farmed in a game for grinding rep. Not numbers in a loyalty bar. But the kind that came from shared struggle. This is what it feels like when you help people. And with the Shop of Freedom system that he has, he believed he could do more. Inigo walked back through the village with slow steps, the path quiet and empty now that the villagers had returned to their routines. The wildflowers from the little girl were still tucked gently into the crook of his arm. His other hand rested near the Glock on his hip, his first weapon, the one that had saved lives. But as he looked down at it, it felt small now. Not just physically, but symbolically. That Glock had been the beginning. A starter pistol in a world that demanded more firepower. He wasn't some scared noob anymore. He had survived his first real engagement. And now, he was ready to gear up like a proper FPS main. Back in the inn, the room still smelled faintly of wood smoke and clean sheets. Inigo dropped onto the bed and let out a breath. Then he whispered, "Open shop." His HUD flickered into life, bright blue holographic panels expanding in his vision with a soft hum. More firepower. More reliability. More freedom. He exhaled and muttered, "Open shop of freedom." Primary weapon, assault rifle slot. He scrolled through the familiar selection. The SCAR-H and FNFL were tempting with their raw power, but he knew what worked for him. Fast handling, low recoil, tight control. His eyes landed on it. M4A1, 5.56 NATO. Reliable. Precise. The bread and butter of freedom. M4A1 added to inventory. Red dot sight equipped. Vertical grip auto included. He grinned as the rifle materialized in a shimmer of light. Matte black, clean lines, and just enough modular attachment rails to make a Call of Duty vet cry. He ran a hand along the body. "Hello, beautiful." Sidearm, pistol slot. Time to retire the Glock for real. Desert Eagle, .50 AE. Excessive? Absolutely. Effective? Hell yes. Desert Eagle added to inventory. Chrome finish variant included. Inigo gave it a spin and holstered it at his thigh. It's ridiculous, he said to himself. And that's why I love it. Tertiary weapon, shotgun slot. He scrolled past the double barrels, paused on the 870, and stopped at exactly what he needed. M1014 semi-auto shotgun 12 gauge, built for war. Eats meat bags for breakfast. M1014 added to inventory. 8-round tube magazine loaded with buckshot. This one was going to ruin anything that got close. Inigo gave it a test pump, hearing the satisfying CHCHK that said, "Don't." Time to look the part. Combat uniform, urban tactical set. Includes ballistic vest, utility belt, gloves, boots, reinforced cargo pants, tactical hoodie. Combat uniform equipped. He watched as the old clothes vanished, replaced by sleek, practical gear. The fabric hugged his form without being restrictive. Light armor plating across the chest, elbow and knee guards, and a sheathed combat knife on his left thigh. Then came the system notification. Perk unlocked. Weight reduction. Carried gear weight reduced by 50%. He jumped lightly in place. No drag. No bulk. Despite carrying a full combat load, it felt like he was just wearing gym clothes. Now that's what I call a cheat code. He backed out of the weapons menu and tapped into the ammo packs tab. Time to feed his new toys. 5.56 NATO, X120 rounds. Standard loadout for the M4A1. .50 AE, X50 rounds. Heavy recoil, heavy damage. Perfect for the Desert Eagle. 12-gauge buckshot, X30 shells. For the M1014. Close-range nightmares incoming. Ammunition distributed to mag pouches and sling carriers. All weapons fully loaded. Spare ammo stored securely in vest compartments. Total tokens spent, 105. Ammunition added to inventory. Auto-stored in tactical vest pouches. Final inventory check. 5x 5.56 NATO magazines. Desert Eagle, equipped. M1014 shotgun, equipped. Combat tactical set, equipped. Combat knife, sheathed. Remaining balance, 1763 tokens. Still plenty left for future shopping. He looked at himself in the cracked mirror. What stared back wasn't a gamer anymore. He looked like a one-man PMC. And damn, he looked cool. Inigo gave himself one last glance in the mirror. The matte black M4A1 slung across his chest. The chrome-plated Desert Eagle gleaming at his thigh. The M1014 resting across his back. The combat gear fit snugly, molded to his frame like it was made for him. And the look. Lethal. But also not subtle. Yeah, he muttered, turning sideways. No way I'm walking around in town without scaring people. He imagined stepping out of the undressed. Farmers would freak. Children would cry. And the town guards? They'd probably accidentally stab him. His hand flicked open the HUD again. There had to be a solution. Inventory options. Equipment visibility. Toggle concealment mode on. A ripple of blue light passed over his gear. The rifle shimmered, then vanished from sight. The shotgun followed. His Desert Eagle, knife, extra mags, all gone to the naked eye. Then came the notification. New feature unlocked. Quick draw. Allows immediate manifestation of hidden weapons with mental command or combat reflex. Draw time. Instantaneous. Now we're talking, Inigo said, eyes gleaming. Civvy by day, operator by surprise. With just a thought, the M4A1 shimmered back into view, materializing in his hands with a soft zap of blue energy. He held it for a moment, then willed it away. Gone again. Like pulling weapons out of an invisible armory. Okay, that's actually busted, he grinned. His fingers itched with excitement. He wasn't just some dude with a gun anymore. He had a loadout, a system, and now stealth. With a quiet chuckle, he turned and opened the window, letting in the mid-morning breeze. Outside, Valebrook was already moving again. Now, he wondered, what should he do at this point? Sure, he could just simply stay here and live his life by fulfilling a quest in this town. But that would be boring. Maybe it's time to leave and go to the big city. Inigo found Garrick just outside the forge, hammering down a bent horseshoe with slow, careful strikes. The old soldier looked up as Inigo approached, tilting his head slightly at the sight of the teen's confident stride and new, sharper aura. Looking confident today, huh? I have an image to keep now since I am the hero of this village, Inigo said, chuckling. He glanced around to make sure no one was listening, then stepped closer. Hey, I've got a question, he said. Where's the capital? Garrick raised a brow. You thinking of leaving already? Not leaving, Inigo replied. Just moving forward. The older man leaned on his hammer, wiping sweat from his brow. Capital's called Elandra. East of here. Big, busy, way more complicated than Valebrook. You'll need a coin, a travel pass, maybe a few favors. Luckily, you have those 3 as the village of Valebrook will provide it for you. Is that true? Thanks. Let's go meet the elder.